No explosion, no missile, no soldiers crossing a border, just silence, and a few thousand lines of code. Deep in the Iranian desert, a technician steps into one of the world's most secure facilities. He checks the system. Everything looks normal. The centrifuges spin smoothly. The readings are stable. No alarms, no signs of failure. But something is already inside. For weeks, it has been watching, learning the machines, studying the operators, waiting. And on a day that feels no different from any other, it finally moves. One by one, the centrifuges begin to tear themselves apart. Not from a bomb, not from an airstrike. From code, invisible, precise, and completely silent. This wasn't fiction. It happened. The weapon had no trigger, no explosion, no warning. It was a computer virus called Stuxnet, and it didn't just damage a facility, it changed warfare forever. So here's the question. If an invisible weapon can bring a nation's most protected program to its knees without firing a single shot, what is actually safe anymore? To understand Stuxnet, you have to understand the crisis it was built to solve. By 2005, Iran had restarted a secret uranium enrichment program at Natanz, a facility never declared to international inspectors, scaled suspiciously like a weapons program rather than a civilian power plant. Diplomatic pressure failed. UN sanctions failed. And by 2009, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was privately threatening military airstrikes. The window for a non-military solution was closing fast, and Washington knew it. The West desperately needed another option. Something precise, something deniable, something the world had never seen before. The idea, in theory, sounds almost elegant. If you cannot destroy a facility with bombs without starting a war, you find another way inside. Not with soldiers, not with missiles, with code. But what was actually built was so far beyond anything the world had ever seen that when security researchers finally got their hands on it, many of them struggled to find language adequate to describe it. Stuxnet was not malware in any conventional sense. It was not the kind of virus someone writes to steal passwords or hold files hostage. It was a precision-engineered weapon, one that reportedly took a dedicated team of developers, working under the covert US-Israeli operation codenamed Olympic Games. Multiple years to design, test, and refine. Reverse engineers who later dissected its code described the experience as peeling back an onion that never seemed to end. Every layer of analysis revealed another layer underneath, another mechanism, another redundancy, another failsafe. The codebase was enormous by malware standards, roughly half a megabyte, at a time when most malicious programs were a fraction of that size. To truly grasp why Stuxnet was so dangerous, you need to understand three things about how it worked, and each one is more alarming than the last. The first thing, it weaponized 0 days at a scale never seen before. A 0-day vulnerability is a flaw in software that its developers don't know exists yet. Because no patch has been written, there is no defense. Security agencies and criminal hackers alike treat 0 days as extraordinarily valuable commodities. A single 0 day can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars on the black market. Intelligence services hoard them like nuclear warheads, saving them for operations where the stakes justify the expenditure. Using even 1 0 day in a single attack is considered a significant and expensive commitment. Stuxnet used four separate, previously unknown vulnerabilities, all operating in concert. That level of investment signaled something unambiguous to every security researcher who examined the code. This was not criminals. This was not hacktivists. This was a government, or multiple governments willing to burn 4 of their most valuable digital assets on a single mission. The sheer cost of that decision, in intelligence terms, was staggering. It meant whoever authorized Stuxnet considered the target important enough to spend resources that could not be replaced quickly, if at all. The second thing, it was surgically precise in a way no malware had ever been. Most viruses spread indiscriminately. They infect whatever they can reach, cause whatever damage their code enables, and move on. Stuxnet was the opposite. It was designed to search for one specific configuration. Siemens Step 7 industrial software, running on Windows, connected to a particular model of Siemens programmable logic controller, configured in the exact arrangement used inside Natanz. If a machine it encountered did not match every single parameter of that fingerprint, Stuxnet did nothing. Absolutely nothing. It passed through computers at universities, in hospitals, at energy companies around the world, and left them completely untouched. This precision was not accidental. It was deliberate legal engineering. Analysts who studied Stuxnet noted with fascination that the weapon's code contained explicit constraints, hard limits on what it could affect, how many times it could replicate, how broadly it could spread. This level of restraint pointed to something unusual. Lawyers had almost certainly been in the room when the specifications were written. The developers had been given rules. The weapon had to be precise enough to withstand legal scrutiny, which meant it had to be precise enough to avoid any accusation of indiscriminate harm against civilian infrastructure. That kind of legal fingerprint, researchers observed, was something you would expect from the United States government, not from Russia, not from China, nations that might not have cared so much about the legal implications. The third thing, and this is the one that makes Stuxnet genuinely terrifying, is what it did once it was inside. Stuxnet didn't just attack the centrifuges. It first spent 30 days doing nothing at all except watching. It recorded the normal operational signatures of the Natanz facility, the spin frequencies, the pressure readings, the temperature patterns, the behavior of every system it could observe. 30 days of normal data, captured and stored. Then it used that recorded data to construct a perfect lie. When Stuxnet finally activated and began manipulating the centrifuges, it simultaneously fed the monitoring systems a looped playback of those 30 days of normal readings. Every screen in the control room showed normal. Every gauge read exactly what a healthy system should read. The operators had no idea. The supervisors had no idea. The technicians walking the floor had no idea. They were watching a performance, a fabricated reality, while the actual reality, spinning metal tearing itself apart at speeds it was never designed to reach, raged invisibly behind the display. The centrifuges at Natanz were engineered to spin at approximately 1,000 hertz. Stuxnet commanded them to accelerate to 1,400 hertz, 40% beyond their maximum design tolerance, before slamming them down to near zero and then ramping them back up again. The mechanical violence this created was catastrophic. Centrifuges are instruments of extraordinary precision, balanced to tolerances measured in thousandths of a millimeter. At 1,400 hertz, under that kind of cyclical stress, they do not simply break down. They shatter. Shards of aluminum fly outward at lethal velocity. Uranium hexafluoride gas, toxic and corrosive, vents into the air. In a cascade of interconnected machines, one failure triggers the next. And when the engineers finally reached for the emergency shutdown, the big red button that was supposed to stop everything, Stuxnet had already been there. It had infiltrated the shutdown systems too. In documented cases, it overrode the command entirely. The operators pressed the button. Nothing happened. The plant was already beyond their control. They were not operators anymore. They were audience members watching a disaster they had no power to stop. That is what made Stuxnet categorically different from every cyber weapon that had come before it. It didn't just live in the digital world. It crossed over into the physical one. It turned software instructions into mechanical destruction. It made machines kill themselves, and it made the people responsible for those machines completely blind to what was happening until the damage was already done. Now, here is the detail that makes the whole story even more extraordinary. The computers at Natanz were air-gapped. Air-gapping is the gold standard of industrial security. It means a network is completely physically isolated from the public internet. No wireless connection, no open external port, no route in from the outside world. The reasoning is simple and intuitive. If you cannot reach a computer from outside, you cannot attack it from outside. For decades, air-gapping was considered essentially foolproof protection for critical infrastructure. Stuxnet's architects considered that assumption and quietly engineered around it. They didn't try to breach the air gap remotely. They arranged for someone to carry the weapon inside. The delivery mechanism was a USB drive. Specifically, the virus was designed to exploit a vulnerability in the way Windows handles shortcut files, the tiny icons that represent programs and folders. When a USB containing Stuxnet was inserted into a Windows machine and the user opened the folder, Windows automatically attempted to render the shortcut icons. That rendering process itself was enough to trigger the payload. The user didn't need to click anything. They didn't need to open any file. The act of looking at the folder was sufficient. Whoever physically carried that USB into Natanz almost certainly had no idea what they were doing. The most probable scenario, widely accepted among intelligence analysts, is that the drive was pre-infected and strategically placed, perhaps given to a contractor, perhaps left somewhere it would be picked up and used, the kind of human engineering operation that intelligence agencies have been running for decades, just never in service of a digital weapon quite like this one. Once inside, Stuxnet moved through the internal network with patience and purpose. It scanned. It mapped. It searched for the specific Siemens configuration it was looking for. And when it found it, when it finally encountered the exact fingerprint of the Natanz centrifuge control systems, the 30-day watch began. The Iranians never saw it coming, and for months after it began its work, they still couldn't understand what was happening to their facility. Inside Natanz, the confusion was total. Centrifuges were failing at rates that defied any technical explanation the engineers could construct. Parts were replaced, configurations were reviewed, technicians were interrogated, and, in some reported cases, arrested, because the damage was so inexplicable and so consistent that human sabotage seemed more plausible than mechanical failure. Iran's nuclear program was hemorrhaging machines, and the people running it genuinely did not know why. The answer was being assembled, piece by piece, on the other side of the world. A small security firm in Belarus had flagged an unusual piece of code found on a client's machine. It was passed along to researchers at Symantec, who began what would become one of the most demanding forensic investigations in cybersecurity history. The Symantec team, joined eventually by researchers at other firms and at the US Department of Homeland Security, spent months reverse engineering a codebase so sophisticated that the usual tools and timelines were useless. A standard piece of malware might take 20 minutes to fully understand. Stuxnet took them over 3 months, working continuously before they felt they had a complete picture. What they published in the summer of 2010 sent shockwaves through the global security community. The 40 days, the Siemens-specific targeting, the fake sensor data playback, the legal constraints embedded in the code, the geographic infection maps that pointed overwhelmingly, unmistakably, at Iran. and the IAEA inspection records, which showed that in the period just before Stuxnet's discovery, approximately 2,000 centrifuges at Natanz had been taken offline. A number and a pattern consistent with exactly the kind of attack the virus was designed to execute. The Iranian government's initial response was silence, then denial, then partial admission. President Ahmadinejad acknowledged that a virus had caused disruptions at nuclear facilities, while insisting the damage was minor and already resolved. Analysts watching the IAEA data and the centrifuge replacement records found that claim difficult to accept. In 2012, the New York Times published its landmark investigation, citing unnamed American officials confirming that Stuxnet had been a joint US-Israeli operation, that Olympic Games had been real, had been authorized at the highest levels of the US government, and had been running for years before Symantec's blog post inadvertently brought it to a premature end. A federal leak investigation was launched. It stalled in 2015, reportedly because prosecutors feared that proceeding to trial would require the government to officially confirm details it still desperately wanted to deny. The silence continued. It continues to this day. The diplomatic aftermath was equally complicated. Iran accused both the United States and Israel of committing an act of war. International legal scholars debated whether Stuxnet met the threshold for armed conflict under international law. No definitive answer was ever reached, because the world had no legal framework built for a weapon like this one. The story of what Stuxnet did to Iran is alarming, but the story of what Stuxnet means for everyone else is the one that should genuinely frighten you. Stuxnet was not just a weapon built to damage one facility in one country. It was proof of concept, a demonstration that the theoretical threat of destructive cyber warfare against physical infrastructure was not theoretical at all. It was real, it was achievable, and once the code was publicly dissected and documented, the detailed blueprint for how to do it was available to anyone with the technical sophistication to read it. Consider what that means in practical terms. The same class of industrial control systems that Stuxnet exploited, the programmable logic controllers, the SCADA networks, the automated management software, run essentially all of the critical infrastructure that modern civilization depends on. Power generation facilities, electrical transmission grids, water treatment and distribution systems, natural gas pipelines and refineries, hospital building management systems, railway and air traffic control networks, financial transaction processing infrastructure, port and logistics automation, nuclear power plants. Every one of these systems was, in many cases, designed before cyber warfare against industrial controls was considered a realistic threat. Many of them were built with the implicit assumption that physical isolation, proprietary software, and obscurity were sufficient defenses. Stuxnet demolished each of those assumptions in turn. It defeated physical isolation through a USB drive. It defeated proprietary software by reverse engineering the specific Siemens platform used by the target. And it defeated obscurity by simply being patient, by spreading quietly across thousands of machines worldwide until it found the one configuration it was looking for. Stuxnet spread to more than 100,000 computers across roughly 155 countries before it was identified. The overwhelming majority of those infections were inert. The virus found no matching fingerprint and did nothing. But that global reach, achieved before anyone even knew the weapon existed, illustrated something deeply unsettling about the nature of this kind of threat. By the time you know you have been targeted, the weapon may have already been inside your network for months. For Iran, the consequences of Stuxnet extended far beyond the physical damage at Natanz. The attack shattered whatever confidence the Iranian government had in the security of its critical systems, and simultaneously demonstrated with crystal clarity what a sophisticated cyber weapon could accomplish. The response was predictable and, from a strategic standpoint, entirely rational. Iran invested heavily, rapidly, and deliberately in building its own offensive cyber capabilities. Before Stuxnet, the Iranian cyber army was primarily an internal surveillance apparatus, focused on monitoring dissidents, restricting information, controlling the domestic digital space. After Stuxnet, the mission expanded dramatically. Funding increased, recruitment accelerated. The strategic objective shifted from defense and suppression to active offensive capability. Within a few years, Iranian-linked hacking groups were conducting sophisticated operations against Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil company, destroying the hard drives of roughly 30,000 computers in a single attack in 2012. They were targeting US banks with sustained distributed denial-of-service campaigns. They were penetrating the networks of regional adversaries and laying the groundwork for operations that would take years to fully surface. The country that received Stuxnet became a country that deployed Stuxnet-style thinking against others. That pattern, attack produces capability, development produces counterattack, is the essential dynamic of every arms race in history. Nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, electronic warfare, biological research programs. In every case, the first demonstration of a new capability prompted every nation with the resources to replicate it to immediately begin doing so. Stuxnet was no different. What was different was the speed of proliferation. Nuclear weapons require uranium, specialized equipment, massive physical infrastructure, and years of engineering. Cyber weapons require talent, time, and hardware that is commercially available. The barrier to entry is dramatically lower. The timeline for catching up is dramatically shorter. United States Cyber Command, formalized just 1 year before Stuxnet's discovery, grew into a full unified combatant command with thousands of personnel and an offensive mission. China's People's Liberation Army built an entire branch, the Strategic Support Force, dedicated in part to cyber operations. Russia's Military Intelligence Directorate expanded its cyber units into some of the most aggressive offensive hacking organizations in the world. North Korea, a country with limited conventional military resources, but a substantial investment in technical talent, built the Lazarus Group into a cyber operation capable of attacking everything from Hollywood studios to central banks. In 2016, Lazarus Group hackers executed the single largest cyber bank heist in history, stealing $81 million from Bangladesh's central bank by exploiting the SWIFT interbank transfer network, demonstrating, once again, that in a world running on interconnected software, the most devastating weapon is the one that arrives in silence and leaves before anyone realizes it was there. The direct line from Stuxnet to that attack, to the ransomware campaigns that have paralyzed hospitals, to the grid intrusions that have given foreign powers persistent access to energy infrastructure, to the supply chain attacks that have compromised thousands of organizations simultaneously, that line is not a coincidence. It is a progression. Stuxnet established the doctrine. Everything since has been refinement, expansion, and proliferation of the same fundamental insight. That in the 21st century, the most powerful weapons are invisible, and the most vulnerable targets are the ones that have convinced themselves they are protected. One analyst called Stuxnet a Trinity moment, a reference to the first nuclear detonation in 1945. That test proved a new category of weapon was possible. The secret escaped immediately. Within years, multiple nations had the bomb. Stuxnet was Trinity for cyberspace. Before 2010, cyber attacks lived in screens and servers. They were disruptive, but abstract. They didn't bleed. After Stuxnet, a virus had physically destroyed sovereign infrastructure. Without a declaration of war, without a fingerprint, without accountability. The door is open. The lesson is learned. The next weapon may not target centrifuges. It may target your city's power grid, your hospital, your water supply. The weapon is invisible, but what it leaves behind is not.